So as mentioned, in this section, we're going to build a REST API with Go. And in case you don't know what a REST API is, simply think of it as a website that's not serving HTML code, but instead data that can then be used by any client that needs that data. So if you're, for example, building a mobile app for iOS or Android, that app might need to talk to some server to store user data or user-generated data, or to fetch some data. And that backend to which it talks very often is such a REST API. So we're going to build such a web server that simply wants data or is prepared to receive and store data, and that also serves data to any client that needs that data. So we're not going to deal with HTML or anything like that. Instead, we're just going to focus on this data interface, you could say. And we're also not going to build a mobile app or anything like this in this section, because Go would be the wrong language for that. Instead, we're just going to build that backend REST API. So that's the project we're going to work on. And the REST API I want to build together with you should support the following routes, the following endpoints, as these things would also be called. So it should simply support that the clients send these kind of requests to the REST API. So for example, a GET HTTP request to the domain that serves or that hosts this API /events, or a POST HTTP request, which is a standard HTTP request also to domain /events to create a new bookable event. Because what we're going to build in this section will be an event booking REST API. So a dummy API that could be used as a backend for a project that wants to allow users to create events, view events, register for events, and so on. And therefore, this API will also support user authentication, user sign up and log in. And will actually also use this fact that we have users in this demo API that we're building to require authentication for certain endpoints. So that, for example, only authenticated users can create new events or update events and so on. In addition, we'll also add extra protection to the updating and deletion endpoints here, because I want to make sure that an event can, for example, only be updated by the user who created the event, not by any random user. And we're going to implement this protection layer with help of a concept called JSON Web Tokens, which will simply mean, as you will see, that when we log a user in, we send back a token, a string in the end, that's generated by the server in a way such that only the server can verify that the token is valid. And this token can then therefore be used for requests to these endpoints. And we can then check whether it is a valid token, because as mentioned, only this server will be able to verify whether it is a valid token. So we'll issue such a token and will then use that token for authentication. And it will become clearer once we start building this and once you see it in action. But that's the general plan for the REST API. That is what I want to build together with you, and that's what we'll get started with in a brand new Go project, which I did already set up here, just an empty main.go file, and we'll start working on this together in the next lecture.